October 29th, Vasiliy Lomachenko will be back in action. And we're going to get to see him step in there against Jamaine Ortiz. Now look, I'll forgive you if you've never heard of Jamaine Ortiz before. A lot of people haven't heard his name. Not a real big name guy. Media isn't talking about him a bunch. He had some success in his amateur career, right? 100 wins, 14 losses. Made it to the silver medalist in the 2015 National Golden Gloves tournament. Made it to the semifinals of the 2016 Olympic trials. Then he ends up turning pro. Now, pretty much, for the most part, hasn't fought anybody since he turned pro. I mean, not exactly nobody. He did fight Jamal Herring, but that wasn't Jamal Herring at his best. I'll just say that. But he looked good. He did what he was supposed to do. He got the guy out of there. But that was really the one name guy that we've seen him fight. Right? 16-0 with one draw, 8 knockouts. Just not there yet. 26 years old. Stepping in against Lomachenko. Lomachenko, man. This guy, you want to talk about an amateur career that was pretty successful on the one hand for Ortiz. We can look at an amateur career for Lomachenko that was just through the roof ridiculous success. We want to look at the professional career of Ortiz. He's got 17 fights with the draw, 16 wins. Lomachenko isn't that far off. Lomachenko has basically the same number of professional fights. But he's seen a slightly different amount of success in the professional ranks, right? He's seen a slightly more rigorous level of competition since he's been here. So you look at a fight like this, and the first thing that I think is, why is Lomachenko going to take it? Why is Ortiz going to take it? Okay? Because I don't really need to handicap this one all that much. We kind of know what's going to happen, right? We pretty much know what the outcome's going to be when we see a guy come into a fight at minus 2,000 on the money line. Right? When you're 20-1 odds, we pretty much know what's going to happen. Now, it's not to say that great upsets don't happen. We've seen, the most famous one of all, I would have to say, is Buster Douglas versus Mike Tyson. Right? That was 42-1? Mike Tyson goes out there, gets knocked out. 42-1 favorite. More recently, we saw Andy Ruiz put it on Anthony Joshua in their first fight. He was like a 25-1 underdog. But he goes out there and gets the win. So it's not to say that these things are impossible. It's not to say that it can never happen. But look, if we're being perfectly honest with each other, when we look back at those fights, we know why those happen. And I get it, hindsight's 20/20. But think about it. Mike Tyson, just incredibly in a bad place in the sense that he had been working with Don King. He was not staying focused. He was not training the way he was supposed to. He was not motivated at all. The slip was coming over a period of time. It was just a little bit hard to see because of the fact that he had this incredible power and explosiveness. So even though he was in some bad spots in some earlier fights, remember he got caught by Frank Bruno, stiffened his knees for a second, but he was able to overcome that and end up getting the wins. Just so happens he goes in there against Buster Douglas, who has the absolute fight of his life, and he can't get his way out. Tries super hard, man. Scores that late knockdown, but can't get the win. Then we see Anthony Joshua. Ruiz stepped in as a late replacement. Ruiz wasn't even supposed to be there that night. He was supposed to be fighting Big Baby Miller. And there was a lot of bad blood and a lot of animosity going into that fight. I guarantee you, Anthony Joshua was emotionally invested in being able to go out there and put it on Miller. Right? Miller was a huge underdog himself in that fight. Right? He was overrated, or he was in over his head. He wasn't supposed to be there. He was going to get the brakes beat off of him by all measures, right? That's pretty much what everybody figured was going to happen. He was trying to really get under Anthony Joshua's skin, trying to goad him, trying to draw him into a slugfest and everything. So it had built up this bad blood. Then dude pops, 1, 2 dirty drug tests, gets pulled from the fight. Andy Ruiz steps in late. I think it was a big emotional letdown for Joshua. I think he completely underestimated Ruiz. So he ends up getting upset. Okay, so that kind of sets the stage. We see how big upsets happen. They typically don't happen because we think the guy who's a 20-1 favorite is overrated and the guy who's a 20-1 underdog is that underrated, right? That's typically not what happens. It's like these special set of circumstances and then these upsets occur. Not to say that they're not underrated, but not underrated to the point of 20-1. So we step into this one and we look at Lomachenko. So you have to ask yourself, is the potential here for this kind of an upset? You look at Ortiz and the guy can fight. Like I said, I mentioned his amateur record. You look at his professional style. He's got fast hands. He throws good combinations. He's got an offense that's spontaneous and explosive. Out of nowhere, he can just explode with some stuff. He can let his hands go. He can throw in these big combinations. He can come forward. He's got quick and agile feet when he wants to use them. He knows how to go to the body, works behind a jab, right? Those are all very good things. So you would think that when you see a guy like that, kind of anything can happen, right? He can come out and it can just, all the ingredients can stir in the pot. It can be magic for one night and all of a sudden he puts something together. Sure, it doesn't really have a punch. 16-0-1 with only 8 knockouts. Now, there's a lot of, now you may be thinking, what do you want him to have? 14, 15 knockouts? Yeah, I do. If you got power and that's the point you're at in your career where you're fighting nobodies, look at the guys that he's been fighting. Like I said, for the most part, he's been fighting nobodies. That's what you do earlier in your career. That's when you get those knockouts. If you've got above average power or really good power, those are the guys that you end up smoking, and you smoke them early in fights. So you got to look at this and you think, Ortiz doesn't have power like that, particularly when he's going to go up against a guy like Lomachenko, who you know has a chin because you know he's been in there against punchers. You know he's been caught before. Stood up to it all. All right, not to say he never been dropped, but I'm just saying he's never been stopped. Now, you look at all of that and you think, could he put something together? Sure. But it would have to be a situation where Loma would have to overlook him. Loma would really have to overlook him. Now, is that going to be the case? Is that possible? I doubt it, man. Highly, highly, highly doubt it. Right? Why? Because Loma's incredibly disciplined. He's coming back from this fight. This isn't a fight where it was supposed to be something else. It looked like it was going to be one thing. We had the emotional letdown, and all of a sudden he's fighting this guy or whatever, a late replacement like we saw with Joshua Ruiz. Not the case at all. This is him coming back. This is him. He would have been more active. He would have continued to fight. Let's not forget he would have got that fight with Kambosos instead of Haney if it wouldn't have been for the war in Ukraine. If that whole thing would have happened, if he wouldn't have had to go over there because of that, he would have already got the title fight. That war happened, that broke off and put everybody on a completely different track. Loma doesn't get the shot, ends up going to Haney. We saw the rematch happen there. Now we see Loma coming back. He's getting this fight with Ortiz. This is a stay busy fight. This is a tune-up fight. This is a, hey, you haven't been boxing in a while. Knock the rust off against a guy who's skilled, but he's a young guy who doesn't have much power, and you'll have to put some things together and you'll have to make it happen and everything. He's not going to just fall down for you. He's not a tomato can. This guy isn't a part-time teacher, right? This is a skilled fighter. But make no mistake about it, Loma's expected to blow through this dude. The odds show it. The fact that we see Bob Arum saying before the fight, before the rematch with Haney and Kambosos, we saw Bob Arum come out and goes, look, the winner of this fight, meaning Haney and Kambosos, is going to fight the winner of Lomachenko and Ortiz in the first quarter of 2023 for the belts. Now, look, of course he says that, but everybody knows what that's going to be. We see Haney versus Kambosos going in. Huge odds. Haney's expected to win that rematch, which he does by just an incredibly wide margin. Very skilled fighter, impressive performance. Now we see Loma coming into this one. Incredibly wide odds. He's expected to win this one, and we're looking at setting up the showdown between Haney and Lomachenko in the first quarter of 2023. That's what Bob Arum wants. Right? That's what makes the most sense. That's what makes the money. That's what, and to be perfectly honest, that's what Loma deserves after being such a dominant title holder for as long as he was. Let's not forget, he went in there and he lost that fight to Teofimo Lopez, legitimately lost the belts, but he never got the rematch. When Lopez ends up losing to Kambosos, never ends up getting that fight because the war breaks off. So Haney wins it, defends it, now we're coming back around. Everything's set up for this to happen. I don't view Ortiz as a threat. He's a good fighter. He's an above average fighter that nobody's heard of. This is going to be a fight that's going to get him two things. Three things if you consider the payday. But one, it's going to get him a lot of experience. He hasn't fought guys anywhere near this level of competition before. He's 26 years old. He needs to make that step up. Or he needs to just put this on the back shelf. There comes that point in your career. Look, he had an impressive amateur career. Did a lot of good work. Now he's got 17 fights into his professional career. Fought Jamal Herring. He stepped up on the absolute biggest stage with arguably the biggest name out there. Incredibly impressive skill set that Lomachenko has. So he's going to go in there. You figure he's going to lose. He's going to get dominated in the fight. But what you're hoping is that as a young guy, 26 years old, he picks up a lot of experience. He picks up a lot of tricks. Because if you're his promoter, you're thinking, I need to get this guy going. I need to put him out there on the track to start winning world titles. I need to hope that he delivers on the promise and the potential that we saw in him when he was young. Like, you can't wait forever, man. Fighting's a young man's game. It's like, when are you going to turn that corner and really try to make a push and be successful? When you're 30? That's when you're supposed to be entering the prime of your career. That's when you're supposed to be doing some of your best work, but you want it to already be at the top. You want to make that climb when you're young, right? So they're kind of putting him on this track now where it's like, put up or shut up, sink or swim type thing. And really, really, really what's going to be telling is how Ortiz does in his next 2 to 3 fights after this one. But I expect him to go out there and lose this one. I expect him to get dominated. Look, we all know what Lomachenko brings to the table. The angles, the footwork, the combination punching, the way that he goes up and down with the left hand, just the little subtle angles and things that he uses, and the shifts and the feints to keep guys guessing, the timing. I mean, it's a masterclass out there, especially when he gets on all when he's firing on all cylinders. And like I said, he's got a chin on him, you know, and he knows how to fight. I mean, look at that fight with Lopez. I think it was so impressive. Yes, he was injured in that fight on top, but let's not talk about that. Let's just focus on this thing. He comes out in a fight and he's losing. He's fighting a guy in Teofimo Lopez who's younger, who's incredibly explosive, who's got really dynamic offense, who's got incredibly hard punching power, and he was just firing on all cylinders that night. And around the 6th round or so, Loma starts to turn the tide, starts to win some rounds for himself. Just that fact alone. Now, you throw in the fact that he was injured, that's a whole nother level. But just that fact alone, that he was able to turn it the way that he did, shows the kind of skill level that he has, though, shows the ring IQ that he has, shows how he's able to make adjustments in the middle of a fight against a guy who's more athletic than him, younger, stronger, who's fighting faster that night. And now you look at him against a guy like Ortiz, like, man, he's going to go in there and he's going to put it on this dude. That's what the odds say. That's what I'm fully expect to happen. This is completely here to set up the showdown that we have in the first quarter of 2023 for all the belts at 135. Now, the real question apparently seems to be whether or not Devin Haney's going to still be there for that fight. He's indicated online that 135 pounds is hard to make. He's been doing it for a long time. We see guys like Paulie Malignaggi calling him out, saying that you are avoiding the fight with Lomachenko. You're not going to want this fight. You are going to conveniently vacate the belt and move up to 140 so that you don't have to take this loss on your record because it's going to be a bad loss. I don't know. Honestly, I don't know. Could he lose to Lomachenko? Psh, absolutely. I think anybody could lose to Lomachenko. He's that good. Could he go out there and beat Lomachenko? Sure, the possibility for that exists as well. I'm not saying it's likely. I'm not saying it's probable. And that is something that you really need to think about if you're a young guy like Devin Haney. Now, I'm not saying that it's hard to make the weight. I'm sure it is, man. He's got a big frame and he's young. I bet you it's a tough cut down to 135. But think if you get Lomachenko's name on your resume. If you're Devin Haney and you're a young guy and you already go out and grab all the belts and then you go out and you beat Lomachenko and get that name on your resume, that's incredible, dude. That's going to be huge. What's it going to do for you if you lose? I don't know. I wouldn't necessarily be so worried about it. Didn't hurt Canelo that much when he lost to Mayweather early on in his career. So I'm not necessarily sure that Haney getting lost to a guy like Lomachenko early on in his career is going to hurt him that much. But it would give him an incredible amount of experience. It would teach him so much that he would be able to use going forward and apply for the rest of his career. So I don't know what he's going to decide to do. I don't know how that one's going to play out. As a fan, man, I hope that we see the best of the best of the best to fight each other. So you got Haney, who looks awesome at 135 pounds, probably got the best jab in the game, going up against a guy like Lomachenko, who's the shorter fighter, but he's got this awesome footwork and these angles and these ring IQ and a way to just be able to get past that jab and try to find a way in. Dude, it sounds like an amazing chess match. And I think that's what we're going to see. I hope that's what we see because we already saw Haney get past Pai Kambosos. I fully expect Lomachenko to get by Ortiz in this fight, so let me know what you guys think. Is Ortiz going to look good at all? He's going to have some flashes in there. Do you think Haney's going to be there in the first quarter of 2023? Let me know.